James, I got a question for you. How many water heater brands can you name? In fact, let's play a game. We'll go back and forth. I'll start with American Standard.
I would say Bradford White.
Yeah, I would say A.O. Smith.
I think the next one is Rheem.
Ooh, that's Rheem. That's a good one. It's a really good one. In fact, you know what? Let's just start the podcast. Welcome to the Aussie Plumber Podcast. In this episode, we talk about water heaters. And for this specific water heater, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're going to be talking about the Rheem Marathon Electric Water Heater. And this wouldn't be the Aussie Plumber Podcast without the one, the only Mr. James Hill, founder and CEO of the Aussie Plumber here in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. James, how you doing?
G'day, mate. It's always good to be here.
James, the episode is titled The Marathon Tank of Water Heaters. It's a bit of a pun because the marathon tank that we are referring to in the title of the episode is a specific product from Rheem called the Rheem Marathon Electric Water Heater. Now, before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the episode, I'm curious to know the story behind when you first came across the Rheem Marathon Electric Water Heater.
So the first time I really come across the Marathon water heater is when I first moved down to Arizona and saw the lifespan of the water heaters. And I was talking to a homeowner one day, and she was getting sick and tired of replacing them, every so often. So she asked, is there anything else out there where she could just have one water heater? So I done a little digging and found that the Marathon water heater is probably the best bet because that was her forever home.
That speaks volume to the product's longevity. Speaking of which, let's dive back a little bit and start with traditional water heater tanks, such as the homeowner who you served. And I assume this was 5-6 years ago, James?
Yeah, I'd say 5-6 years ago was when I served that homeowner.
Now, when it comes to the tanked water heater, there's really two ways that these things run. We know that the Rheem electric marathon water heater is exactly that, electric. There are other electric models. In fact, most models are probably electric, but there are also gas run water heaters. Is that right, James?
Yeah, it's always out of the two. We got electric and gas. It's a bit of a 50-50 split down here in Phoenix. It all depends on the area and what was built at the time.
Got it. And the Rheem Marathon Electric water heater only comes in the electric model. They don't make a gas one. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's you wouldn't want flames and plastic too close together, so it's only electric.
Now, those traditional tanks, the ones that you often see on the market, in fact, the one that you replaced out of that sweet lady's home who said, is there a more permanent solution to this? The tank that she had before going to the Rheem Marathon Electric water heater, tanks like those tend to last, 8 to 12 years?
Yeah, that seems to be the sweet spot for water heaters down here in Phoenix. It's, once they're getting a bit of a beating from the water that we have down here, 8 to 12 years, I would say, is pretty much the standard of how long you could expect a traditional style tank water heater to last.
Okay, so I would assume that the Rheem Electric Marathon water heater is the same deal, right? 8 to 12 years?
Well, that's the beauty of a Rheem Marathon. So with a traditional tank, we're relying on the old school style, which is true and tested, but it does have its flaws being a metal tank. We all know that metal always has its day. A car rust out, water heaters rust out. And that's why the Marathon's a great choice for homeowners because it has a plastic tank. So the plastic will never rust, and this is how they give you that lifetime warranty.
I see. Now, there's a word here that I need to say about 3 times before moving on. Polybutylene. There, I think I got it. So most water heaters, as you said, are made out of metal, but Rheem makes their marathon tanks out of polybutylene. What the heck is that?
So it's just it's a plastic that can withstand heat pretty well. And it's a pretty durable plastic. So don't think of plastic as being in like a plastic water bottle or a Gatorade bottle or something like this. This is a heavy-duty plastic that's built and designed for temperature fluctuations.
I heard that they're super durable. Is that right, James?
I would say it is. It has the outer casing, insulation, and then an inner casing. So it's a pretty thick water heater. So it can put up with a lot.
On some of these water heater swap outs that you go to do, James, you arrive at a homeowner's house who's had a old style metal water heater for a decade, maybe even over a decade. You might have to watch your fingers when you're lifting those things because the bottom of those things get all rusted and full of corrosion. I assume with this polybutylene and these Rheem marathon electric water heaters, that's not the case, correct?
I would say that is correct. With standard water heaters, I would look at them as maybe an old car, and it's just been sitting outside for a while, and we all know that metal has its day, and it's going to rust, and sure, it can cut you or just start peeling away. With the polybutylene tank on a marathon water heater, now think of a new car. It's nice and smooth around the edges. They've put more plastic into like the bumpers and things like that, but it's always going to be a nice smooth finish on a marathon.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself while you were making that analogy that the Rheem marathon electric water heater would be like if a armored military tank was made out of polybutylene plastic. That's how thick these are.
Yeah, it's thick and it's designed to do what it's meant to do. It's when you have a big company like that putting a stamp on it that it has a lifetime warranty, you got to believe that they've done their research on it.
What about the idea of pressure? Can the marathon handle pressure for longer periods of time than those traditional metal tanks?
So the beauty of having a plastic tank as well is we all know plastic will move if it needs to. So with a metal tank, if your pressure was too high or you had a closed loop system, every time your water heater heats up and cools down, it contracts and it expands, which we all know if you do that too many times with metal, that's when you end up having a leak. The beauty of a marathon water heater, that plastic is designed to do that. So it can handle pressure fluctuations, and that's how they're going to give you that lifetime warranty.
James, once upon a time here at my home, I had to replace something that was called an anode rod. Now, I still to this day have no idea what the heck this thing is. However, according to the Aussie Plumber serviceman, it's kind of a big deal in water heaters. James, what is an anode rod and why should a homeowner in Phoenix care?
So if you have a traditional steel tank water heater, all water heaters are going to have an anode rod. The anode rod is a sacrificial rod. Your water's going to eat away at that rod before it eats away at the tank because it's a softer metal than the tank. So the good rule of thumb is to change them out every 2 to 3 years because we all know that you got to flush it once a year, which is good. Got to get that sediment off the bottom and that's going to help it run better. But the unsung hero of a water heater is an anode rod. If you can keep up to date with changing that, it's going to help your water heater last longer. And the fun fact about anode rods is they use them on ships, they use them on submarines. So we want to divert the water to eat away at that before it eats away at the thing that's important, which in this case is your water heater.
I assume most homeowners in Phoenix have been on a submarine and know exactly what you're talking about, James. But for those who have not, is it fair to say that an anode rod type material is found in an electric kettle?
I do think that you're onto something there. I just think what we're thinking about might be a little bit different. So an anode rod is there to preserve the water heater, or in this case, we're talking about a kettle. But a kettle would have more of a heating element to heat up the water.
Gotcha. And the anode rod and the heating element are two different things, correct?
Yeah, that's right. One does one thing, one does the other.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the Rheem Marathon electric water heater doesn't seem to have the traditional type of anode rod that an old steel metal tank water heater does, much like the anode rod that I had the Aussie Plumber's serviceman replace in my water heater. That was more of a traditional water heater, but the Rheem Marathon electric water heater wouldn't have that type of anode rod, correct?
That's the best part about it, mate. They don't need it. They're not going to rust out. So it's a plastic tank, no need for an anode rod.
Fascinating stuff. I'm going to move on to the efficiency of this product. You know, James, in doing research for this episode, came across one of those YouTube reviewers, and he actually cut open an old Marathon tank, an old Rheem Marathon. He wanted to show how thick the insulation is. And, you know those bulky Yeti coolers? The thing was as thick as one of those. Is that a good thing?
That's what it's all about. Not only are they giving you a water heater that's not going to rust out, but they're giving you one that's more efficient. So in most cases, depending on the size of the unit, the insulation can range anywhere from 2.5 inches up to 4 inches. So it's saving you a lot of money.
You know, I can't help but think of one of those, tradesmen from back in the day who brings his lunch pail to work. Those old tin lunch pails, or those, steel lunch pails. Nowadays, they're bringing, Pelican suitcases or those big Yeti coolers to the job site. And I have to think, if we put two side by side, those old tin metal lunch pails next to one of those modern Yeti coolers that you can bring to the site, which one's going to keep your lunch warmer longer?
I would dare say down here in Phoenix, we all know that if we've left the water in a steel container, you're going to be drinking hot water. So I'd be there having a good bet on the Yeti.
This transitions well into the idea of saving money on your energy bill, because the less heat lost, thanks to those thick Yeti-style cooler water heater tanks, means the water stays hotter longer. Therefore, the less heating is needed over time. Is that accurate, James?
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it, because we always deal with heat loss, and that's how you would figure out the efficiency. So if you think of a standard water heater, not as much insulation, so it heats up, cools back down in between cycles, and if it hasn't got enough insulation, of course, it's going to reduce the temperature faster. That's the great thing about a Marathon water heater, is with that thick insulation, it's going to hold that temperature. So it's not heating as often, and that's how you save the money.
All right. So these Rheem Marathon electric water heaters, they're durable, they're efficient, but no need to maintain them, just plug and go? Or do they still require the regular maintenance?
So we know it doesn't need an anode rod because it hasn't got one. What I would still always recommend is just flushing it every couple of years. I don't think it needs to be flushed once a year like a standard water heater, but I'm still a believer of getting that sediment off from the bottom, just to keep everything moving freely and keeping it as healthy as we can.
The Rheem Marathon electric water heater plays well specifically in Phoenix, Arizona's climate due to the harshness of the water here. Does that make a difference with the different style of water heater, or is that more of a water filtration issue?
I do believe that everyone should have some sort of water treatment here, because one, we're lucky to have water down here. Two, where we get the water from also packs a bit of a punch, and the city of Phoenix does a great job of servicing the water and giving us great water, but it still packs a punch with some hard minerals and things like that. With a traditional style tank steel water heater, that is going to shorten the life of it. But with a Rheem, a Marathon water heater, we don't really have to worry about that. I would always still recommend some sort of water treatment though.
The Aussie Plumber is at an Ace Hardware. A homeowner approaches the Aussie Plumber and says, "Hello, Mr. Aussie Plumber. What water heater do you recommend I buy?" What's your answer, James?
There's a couple of questions I always asked every homeowner I ever dealt with. How long you been in the home? Because I like just to know that they know their home as well. And also, is this your forever home? Some people are planning on moving in a year, and maybe the investment for a marathon water heater might not be the best bet. But a lot of homeowners that we deal with, they are in their forever home. So this is always a great option. I would highly recommend the marathon water heater. This would be your last water heater.
There you go. You've heard it from the Aussie plumber himself. The Rheem Marathon electric water heater is Aussie plumber approved. And it's always good to have an expert on your side when making these investments in your home. James, I just want you to break down the entire scope of the Aussie plumber's water heater service for a homeowner who might be in the market for one. What is it that the Aussie plumber offers from start to finish? From what I've experienced, it's quite the white glove treatment.
Yeah, and honestly, that's what we're known for. It's we're always here to serve. All of our plumbers go out with the idea that they're plumbing advisors. So they're there to answer any question and give you the best guidance so you can make the right choice for your home, your budget, and your family. So when we come to a water heater that looks like it's getting towards the end of its age, we always ask the good questions. When was it serviced last? By servicing, we mean flushing it, changing the anodrod, and ask them, do you know what an anodrod is? We want them to have a clear understanding of, okay, this water heater you have now might have had a short life and it's time for a new one, but this is how we can protect it so you can extend the life and get the longest out of that appliance.
Homeowners in Phoenix, you want to know that your water heater was installed properly, installed correctly. James can tell you horror stories of times he's went out to local community homes and asked, who installed this thing? James, how important is it to have it properly installed?
So there's a good reason why good trusted plumbing companies are licensed. It's because we know how things need to be installed and there's no guessing games. Unfortunately, the biggest thing I see with water heaters and why they don't last is they were never set up properly to begin with, or sometimes even the venting is not done right, and which in turn is a very dangerous thing for you and your family. So it always pays to have a licensed professional come out, assess it, and give you their recommendations so it's safe for your family.
Booking.theaussieplumber.com is where you can book your Aussie Plumber service online, or you can give the Aussie Plumber a call directly. It's 602-820-5551. That's 602-820-5551. If you want to call the Aussie Plumber, it's 602-820-5551. Booking.theaussieplumber.com is the online booking portal. And James, what do Maricopa County homeowners say about the Aussie Plumber?
They only say a couple of words, mate. Crikey, that's great service.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks, mate.